Good morning, CPA Bernard.
Good morning, Esther.
Good morning, Bernard.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning, Esther.
Welcome, our presenter. Just give us like 2 minutes so that we wait for the candidates or some people to log on, and then we shall start in a minute. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm CPA Esther, your wife Sache, the coordinator for this program. But before I introduce our session chair, I'd like to inform you that during mid-morning, that is 11 to 12:30, we shall be having CPA 13, Public Financial Management. Remember last time we had issues of connectivity, so it was scheduled for today. So kindly, if you know anyone who registered for that webinar, kindly let them know that we are going to have it at 11 to 12:30. Our session chair is CPA Nyansio Kaya Uchiri, who will be coordinating this session. Our presenter, you're welcome.
Good morning, participants. We welcome you this morning to this engagement. Thank you, Esther, for that introduction, and welcome our presenter, CPA Bernard Wire. I will first give you a brief introduction of our presenter before he starts to speak to us. Bernard Wire is a certified public accountant. He's also a certified tax advisor, CTA. He holds a master's in financial management from Amity University, and he's also a holder of a bachelor's in commerce accounting option from Mackay University, and currently undertaking a PhD in accounting and finance at the University of Malawi. Bernard has over 10 years experience in finance. He has previously managed the finance departments of CFA or Motors, that's Volkswagen Franchise International. He has also managed the finance department of the International Medical Group, and of recent at Impact Health Organization in Sudan. He's been head of finance at COSU, that's Comprehensive Rehabilitation Services of Uganda. and he's currently a technical advisor in financial management at Impact and Innovation Development Center. CPA Bernard has previously been a tutor until December 2018. That's a brief introduction of our presenter this morning, and join me to welcome him. CPA Bernard, welcome, and please talk to us.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much, Cpa. I'm going to share my screen for the presentation. Let me know if you're able to see. Can you see?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So, and thank you to the Institute of Certified Public Accountants for giving me this opportunity to interact with the candidate or student during this student engagement webinar. I'm hoping that this will be an interactive session and we'll take a lot of learnings out of it. So, like I've been introduced, I'm CPA Wandera with Bernard, and I'm going to be interacting with you on this paper advanced financial reporting, which previously was a paper 13, and in the new syllabus is now paper 12. For the component of the syllabus, I'm sure each one of us will be having a copy of the syllabus as we interact. So in my presentation, I'm going to look at the brief overview. Let's start with the brief overview of this paper. There are a bit of misconception or what this paper entails, and what it examines, what it intends to achieve by the time a candidate has finished this paper. So I've just done a brief overview of what exactly this paper, if a candidate passes this paper, what the candidate should be able to come out with, or what skill this candidate should be able to have attained at the end of this paper, paper 12. So paper 12 is advanced financial reporting, as you all know it. And this paper is meant to equip candidates with technical and professional skills in financial reporting. We are aware that this is a level 3 paper, but it has feeding in papers at level 1 and also level 2, which is financial accounting and financial reporting. So as you keep on growing from the different levels of CPA, the level of requirements keep on changing. At level 3, the technical capability of the candidate, of understanding this paper is what is actually examined. The capability of candidates being able to analyze information, making decisions out of this information, financial information definitely, and being able to use this information to advise, analyze, and also discuss the components of this particular reporting. It's not just a paper that tries to look at the capability of a candidate being able to compute an accounting number and balancing it down. But like you look at it, it's the technical skill that the candidates have in terms of reporting, yeah, in terms of presentation, yeah, and also the professional skills that candidates should be able to come up with at the end of this particular paper. Paper 12 also, yeah, normally intends to equip candidates with that in-depth understanding and the capability that by the end of the paper, the candidate should be able to apply practically the international financial reporting standards. And when you look at the syllabus, it's not only the international financial reporting standards, how to report financial information. Yeah. Also, it also looks at the trends, the current trends in financial reporting. So, and also this paper looks that candidates should be able to have a broader understanding of financial reporting. We all realize that as times move, financial reporting evolves. And that is the expectation or anticipation of what this paper is all about. So it's not just about trying to understand what these international financial reporting standards entail, but a broader understanding and how to report and present this financial information for decision making, and basically at high level. This paper as well, I have been looking at a couple of past paper examinations and also in the syllabus. The syllabus, before any candidates tries to go into this paper and study it, normally in all CPA, in all the CPA papers, there's always what you call the learning outcomes. And these learning outcomes portray or specify specific terms that constitute this paper 12, and all the other papers at level 3. And these terms are what are used in the examination. So today, before we dig deep into this particular paper, we look at these terms and try to understand what do these terms mean. These are what when I was preparing for this presentation, I tried to think there are those basic things that we normally undermine, but those basic things they're actually a great deal. The things that will actually make a difference between two candidates, one who will be able to pass and one who will not be able to pass. So sometimes these are things that maybe we know, but let's first look at this term. I don't know how many candidates have tried to sit down before digging into particular IFRS and things like that. Has any candidate tried to look at the learning outcomes? And if you have looked at the learning outcomes, then what do those learning outcomes entail? So let's look at those terms, which are those learning outcomes. So still under the brief overview. So I have just tried to split down and look at these specific learning outcomes. In one of the learning outcomes, there is the word analyze. At level 3, paper 12, and all the other papers at this level, most of the questions will ask you to analyze. But do candidates understand what analyzing means? So I've tried to pick out a brief meaning of this word in an examination setting. So you go into a paper, you're going to do paper 12, and they give you a case study, and the examiner asks you to analyze the financial information. What does it mean? So there are a few things I've highlighted. Analyze, in simple terms, mean examining something in detail, to explain and interpret detail. I've gotten this from the Oxford Dictionary. But in paper 12, how does it fit in? We will look at that. Let's look at the second one, discuss. I'm sure these are words that we come across when you open any advanced financial reporting paper. Discuss. What does examiner mean by discuss? Definitely, I'm sure we have, all of us here have done a couple of examinations since from lower level to high level, university to master's level, will entail this word discuss. But before you put your pen to paper, have you tried to understand what discuss means? So maybe also for this paper, it's key that some of these words we try to understand them before even trying to look into what these matters, because you will know what it entails in financial reporting, but someone's telling you discuss, but you actually do not know what discuss means. So discuss means to write about a topic in detail as well, and taking into account different issues and our ideas. So you realize that analyze and discuss, look at a topic in detail. So financial reporting, that's where financial reporting draws the line between itself and maybe the other lower papers. Yeah. In a lower paper, you will have, and let me give an example, you will have almost the same question, but I'm not so sure that at level 1, you'll be required to examine or write about it in detail. But so long as you can be able to portray the knowledge at that level. But at level 3, now you go a step higher. And that step higher is to write about this topic in detail. So when you're looking at this paper 12, whenever you see the word discuss, whenever you see the word analyze, what it simply means that we should be able to look at the components that have been examined in terms of advanced financial reporting in detail, and discussing, taking into account the different issues or ideas that the examiner has tried to put to your table for you to be able to discuss them or to analyze them. Another word in the learning outcome is the word apply. I have decided to start with these words because I felt, based on the examiner's comments I have been reading, it seems like as candidates, we take these words for granted. What does apply mean? I'm sure, we all know the word apply in different perspectives, but the perspective I'm looking at is in the perspective of advanced financial reporting. In the Oxford Dictionary, apply means putting something into operation or use. So if the examiner asks you to apply, it's simply meaning that getting the knowledge of the international financial reporting standards and putting them into use, practical use. I'm sure most of us who are undertaking this paper could be finance managers, CFOs, managing departments in finance. How do you put these international financial reporting standards into use or into operation? That's what we call apply. That is the high level knowledge that this paper normally examines. Says, if I open any paper, I'm sure from the first question to the last question, I'm sure I'll come across the word assess. With the examiner, we want you to assess a certain scenario in terms of reporting, advanced financial reporting. But what is assess? I'll look at assess and evaluate. Both of them complement each other. Assess means to estimate the nature, ability, and quality of something. And evaluate means to form an idea of an amount, of a number, of value and also it means to assess. So these words, I think, to a larger extent, contribute to how much candidate will be able to comprehend a question that has been put his or her way and be able to interpret it correctly and present the answers in the required way and be able to pass. These are the words that actually are in the 9 different learning outcomes. So I don't know how many candidates have tried to, just before going to say this is the first topic, second topic, third topic in paper 12, try to look at this word and say, as I am studying or as I'm preparing for the examination, yeah, this is what I expect. I'm not so sure that any other words that I use at this level to ask questions to candidates other than these words that try to portray the high level knowledge. You could realize that they're a bit different, from the wording at level 2 for the same paper or for the feeding paper and at level 1. So in my engagement today, I felt that it's actually key for us to just look at these words. We take them for granted, but they're actually very key. So it's key that candidates should try to comprehend these terms in relation to financial reporting. Just before digging deep into the syllabus and starting to prepare for the examinations and things like that, try to look at those learning outcomes. They will give you the direction under which the examiner is likely to take while they are setting some of these papers for you or examining you from that particular syllabus. So it's key before, when you leave here, as you're preparing for exam, just sit down and look at those words, look at how they feed into the syllabus, yeah? Look at the past papers, how they feed in, how the examiner brings these words, and then ask yourself, what did actually the examiner mean? Just on the learning outcomes, I wanted us to, before also we also dig deep, look at how do those words we just try to look at feed into the learning outcomes. I prepared a table and tried to analyze the two. Just to give you an example, the first one, apply the financial reporting framework. So from the previous slide, we looked at apply means putting into operation or to use the financial reporting framework. So in an examination setting, the examiner asks you to apply certain knowledge of the financial reporting framework. What does the examiner actually mean? Or when you look at the question paper, the first thing when you look at the question, you just start writing. What did actually the examiner mean? Present. What does present mean? Yes, I am aware that from the different levels, level 1, level 2, we have all been faced with the presentation of financial statements, which are the financial positions, financial performance, statement of cash flows, equity statements. But at this level, do we really know what present means? Maybe we just read it there in the paper, and I know when I'm told to present, I'll have a listing of these are the assets, non-current assets, liabilities, this side and this side has balance, and that's it. Present means a particular state of appearance. The financial statements have a particular state of appearance in the International Financial Reporting Standards. I'm aware, even me when I was going through this CPA, at some point I took it for granted that I actually know, I'm actually aware how a financial position looks like. But don't be surprised that at this level, if we did if we did a sample, I'm not so sure how many of us have kept abreast with them with the current presentation requirements of the financial statement. As they keep on changing, I'm sure the examination also keeps on changing. Analyze. Same thing, examine in detail. So just imagine the examiners tell you, analyze the financial statement. Analyze the information in the annual report. What does the examiner actually want? Evaluate the emerging financial reporting issues. If I ask today, what are the emerging issues in the financial reporting and development right now? What is the most recent development in the international financial reporting standards? I expect that candidates of this paper should be able to know that. I'm not so sure how many percentage of the anticipated candidates who are planning to sit for this paper, know the latest development. Remember, it's one of the, it's a component of the syllabus. I think sometime back when I was still lecturing, I would hear candidates saying, I went to the examination and I found this new standard has been examined, but you see it's not in the syllabus. Did you look at the learning outcomes? Emerging development. So it's simply meaning that the examiner is within his or her means. Is actually within his or her means. It's within his or her means to look at the new developments. So I think it's fair enough that candidates take some of these learning outcomes very seriously. Evaluate ethical issues relating to financial reporting. What is to evaluate? It's to form an idea. So you could look at that and internalize some of these learning outcomes and actually what they mean in terms of advanced financial reporting. That would be something very important for all of us. So I've looked at, as usual, we've looked at what are the pass rates in this paper? What's actually happening in this paper? So from 2022 to date, just in the nearest, one of the best way to present financial information, I think, is by using line graphs and trend analysis. So I just put this in a trend or line graph. And without even saying a word, I'm sure if you look at it, you can be able to tell what it actually communicates. Just look, someone look at December 2022 and May 2023. Something very interesting happened. Then the question is why? How? Does it make sense? Was there a very big variance between what was examined in December 2022 and what was examined in the May 2023? If we pick those two past papers, is there a very big variance between these two? Were this syllabus the same? Were the examiners examining the same thing? Or they picked two different components which are actually at variance? Then look at August 2023, then November. So you realize that the pass rate on this paper, if I was asked today, what's the average pass rate of advanced financial reporting in the last 1 year or 2 years, I'm not so sure I will give a very confident answer. of saying normally the pass rate is between, or averagely it's 30% or 35% or 40%, you realize that it's very hard to comprehend. Today, a certain group is passing at 30%. Tomorrow, another group is passing at 5%. So in simple terms, if someone asked me without going into the examiner's comments, I would definitely go back. I would definitely go back here. I think the problem is here. I don't know if I am communicating without having to go to, but you see, they set this standard, but you see, the examiner asked this. If I looked at this and someone asked me, CPA, please analyze for us and tell us, what do you think is the cause of this? Because now, at time immemorial, it is business combination, it is financial instruments, it is ethical issues. They are difficult. I think I'm trying to change my mindset and say, I think that's not the issue. Possibly the issue is here. Possibly the issue is here. I'm taking you back again before we dig deeper into this paper. I had been thinking deeply when I was invited to talk to you again. And I'm like, what defect am I going to come and tell these candidates? I wouldn't want to come and tell you things, the normal things we tell you every other day. But then I realized something hit my mind. I'm like, possibly there could be something behind. And possibly that something behind could be this. So if I was asked again, what is affecting the pass rate? I'm not so sure it's the syllabus. I'm not so sure it's the way of setting. I'm not so sure, definitely, some people, certain myths I have heard saying examiners, candidates. I think it's the wording. I think it's that prior to this paper, candidates have still not comprehended what this paper is all about in a nutshell. And this paper is all about, in a nutshell, on these learning outcomes and on these brief overview components: analyze, discuss, apply, assess, evaluate. So I'd like to challenge all the candidates who are here. Before you dig deep into the syllabus and say, I have read all the standards, I've understood them, I have them at my fingertips. Do you know how to analyze? Do you know how to discuss? Do you know how to apply? What about assessing? What about evaluating? That same knowledge we use in some of our offices to present in spreadsheets and analyze this data. I want to present this financial information. I'm sure it's the same knowledge that should be applied in this paper. So to me, I think this pass rate can be explained by the previous 3 slides. Maybe not necessarily how much the candidates understand the standards. The question is, yes, you understand the standard. Can you discuss it? Can you assess it? Can you evaluate it? Can you apply it? Maybe that will be the difference. Just come to think about it. So let's look at the examiner's comments. Some of these examiner's comments, I felt this slide should not have been part of this presentation, but I was obliged to put it there. Because when I look at the examiner's comments in the last maybe 5 years, I have not seen anything new from the examiner's comments. I'm sure if we try to project or share the last 5 examiners' reports, which we all have access to, and say, let's read out the examiner's comments for the last 5 years and pick out something new that the examiner has picked, I'm not so sure we will pick out anything new. It will be the same. So I just put it here. And the same things that are here, I'm sure, are the same things that we've seen. There's one more comment that I have included here that I haven't seen. When I was reading these comments, I have not seen. It's one of these, but we'll look and see which one of it. Definitely, as usual, inability of candidate to demonstrate the applicability of financial reporting standards. What is the applicability? The wording that I just started with in the learning outcome: assess, discuss, examine, apply. How many of us here, candidates who are preparing to sit for this paper in the upcoming diet, can be able to assess IFRS 3, can be able to discuss IFRS 9, can be able to examine indication of non-coverage of syllabus? Since candidates wake up in the morning and just go and do the papers. It's interesting. There's money attached to doing these papers, I'm sure. If it was me, I would definitely feel a little bit of some pain going to sit a paper when I have not covered maybe a certain percentage of the syllabus, if not 100%. Inadequate presentation skill, same comments, year in, year out. Candidates don't seem to understand the learning outcomes. This is what I started with. But the same comments. Candidate portray lack of knowledge in international financial standards. Inadequate planning during examination. Proper choice of questions. So all these are the comments that we see day in, day out. But do they communicate? But there's one comment I picked out. Examination instructions. It's a rare one. I imagine that if I moved in at level 3 at this level, as much as I would have done as many examinations, candidates normally imagine that the same instructions on that piece of paper will always be the same. What if in this sitting there was one new instruction that never appeared in the last 10 sittings? Is it going to be a crime for the institute or for the examiners? How many candidates of this paper 12, when you reach in the exam and receive that paper before you dive into question 1, question 3, question, yeah? Because from the top of that booklet, the one we used to use, it has wording with the instructions. How many have read on both the booklet and the question paper before digging into question 1 required? I'm sure these examination instructions contribute a certain percentage of passing this paper. So today I would like to challenge candidates for this paper that please read the instructions. They look normal, but please read the instructions. It is as good as every morning I drive from Chireka to Kampala Road for work, driving every day. And then one of these days, you wake up in the morning and there's a diversion. If you didn't pay attention to the diversion, would you still reach the Kampala Road? Those are the instructions. You find it pinned there on the road saying spear motor is no longer accessible. For you to reach to town, you have to pass through Chinawataka. If it changed, are you going to get stuck there and remain there? Instructions. So let's look at, as I was also doing the presentation, so we decided to look at some of this sample discussion. So based on the learning outcomes that I've just discussed with you, let's look at, I decided, let's pick out 2 questions and then look at them on the basis of the examiner's comments and see what was the examiner, what are these things that the candidates underlook on this paper. So let's look at question 1, November 2023. This question examined cash flows of a group and required candidates to prepare cash flow using the indirect method. Let's first look at the observations of the examiner on this question. What did the candidates do? What were they supposed to do? Because I imagine when the candidates, even me myself, if I reached an examination and someone told me to prepare cash flow using the indirect method, I'm sure I will already be rushing to put my pen to paper and ink. But did you understand these cash flows in relation to the learning outcome that the examiner is trying to get out of you? Preparation of cash flows using the indirect method. The examiner noted that candidates were unable to compute goodwill and the relevant cash flow thereof that would feed into the cash flow. At level 2 and level 3, there's always computation of goodwill. At this level, I would be of the expectation that candidates should be able to easily compute goodwill. If assuming I sampled out 10 past papers of this level, how many of those questions will have at least a computation of goodwill? You'll be surprised that I'm surprised that an examiner puts a comment that candidates at this level are unable to compute goodwill and then unable to determine cash flows relating to goodwill, purchase consideration, acquisition of subsidiaries. What kind of cash flow is likely to appear there? What is the cash flow? I was taught at the lower level that cash flow in layman's is money in, money out. Let's look at another comment. Inability to compute cash flows arising from various transactions. Level 3 papers, more especially advanced financial reporting, I'm not so sure it will be able to teach you how to compute cash flows arising from different transactions. I'm sure those are taught at maybe financial accounting and financial reporting. At level 3 now, you apply that knowledge. At some point of those 2 levels, we were taught how to use control accounts. And presentation of workings. What's the essence of the workings? What's the essence of the workings? This one, the last one was a bit interesting. But I'm sure by the time we are at this level, we all have interacted with cash flows. I think in financial reporting, there's some component of cash flows. In financial accounting, there's some component of cash flows. Now, at this level, I still fail to believe if the examiner made an error in this comment, or it's actually a real comment. But I will expect that candidates at the level should easily be able to know what does it mean for money to come in and money to go out. So where a candidate is not able to tell that this is money in or this is money out, I'm using that language to make it a bit easy. And then I think it will be very difficult for a candidate to pass such kind of papers. So based on those examiners' comments, another one, inability to present the cash flow statement. So as you are going through this paper or this level or CPA, I'm sure that presentation of cash flows starts at the lowest level of CPA. That by the time you reach advanced financial reporting, presentation of a cash flow, either using the direct method or the indirect method, should be the easiest way. Just the formatting alone, just the components that go in the investing activities, operating activities, and financing activities, reconciliation of the cash and cash equivalent should be some of the basic things that the candidate should be able to have at the fingertips. So you realize that if I looked at these comments on this paper, on this question 1, and I would like to pick out one of them that maybe could have brought challenge to candidates at this level, then maybe I'm tempted to think that either what we learned at level 1 or level 2, we made them of no use. But then from these comments, it's an indication that whatever knowledge you gain at level 1 in terms of cash flows, at level 2 in terms of cash flows, then that knowledge is very, very relevant at level 3 for this particular paper. Just based on these comments. Let's dig deeper in this question. And so based on those comments, what happened? So I picked out the solution for that paper. That bring out the question definitely just a cash flow. And the comments per each that the examiner had attached to each. Presentation. If you recall my first 2 slides, that one of the learning outcomes at level 3 is to be able to present. In a specific format. It's not rocket science. A cash flow using the indirect method is a cash flow using the direct method. A cash flow using the direct method, it has its specific format. So if you do not incorporate that knowledge that you have picked up at those lower levels, and then consolidated it to the level, the knowledge at level 3, then it will be very difficult to be able to present learning outcome. Now, I've picked out some comments. Let's dissect these comments. Can you believe that candidates were unable to just state the topic? Group consolidated cash flows for the year ended, blah, blah, blah. As you're presenting now, those are the presentation skills that the examiner talks about. That's what the examiner means. That you dipping into making a cash flow without having its title, I'm sure you need a mark. I'm sure there could be a mark attached to the title. How many candidates remember that before I do the presentation, the first thing I'm going to do is to get the title? When you look at my slides today as I'm presenting, at least each one I've attached a title to it. Just imagine that these slides didn't have a title. Just imagine I came and the slides I'm presenting, she did not have a title. It is the same. It's the same here when you're presenting this. I still can't believe candidates are unable to present just the title. It's a mark. Let's look at the operating cash flows. What are the comments there? And when you look at these comments, they are not comments, I feel they're not comments that should be appearing in this paper. The first one was candidate's inability to make adjustments. When you're preparing cash flows using the indirect method, what is the first thing that should come to the mind of a candidate at this level? That remember, in the indirect method, what do? You pick the profit and adjust, because the profit is not a cash flow. It is a combination. We prepare financial statements, all of us from level 1. We know that our financial statements are prepared using the accrual method. Accrual, what does it mean? I will not explain what accrual means, but we all know. If I talk and say the word accrual, it's simply meaning that inside these figures of the profit, there are components seated in these figures. They are actually non-cash. So to prepare them, a candidate first needs to adjust this profit, to eliminate these components from the profit. To eliminate them, the candidate should be able to know, how do I eliminate them? How were they incorporated in the first place? And if I'm removing them, how am I removing them? Very interesting. Depreciation. It's not a lecture room, but I just want us to look through it. Inside this profit, if we are saying, the examiner is saying that candidates were unable to adjust for depreciation. To arrive at this profit, how did you treat this depreciation? And if I'm adjusting it now to remove it, how do I treat it? That's what the examiner means. That's what indirect method means. Exchange gain, amortization. These are components that at this level, that they are not components that are rocket science I need to calculate for it. I am sure that they're just seated somewhere in that profit and loss where you just pick and put. I would call them free marks. My best tutor at CPA used to tell me that CPA is about marks accumulation. How many components? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 components. Let's imagine that each of those components is 1 mark. Second point, inability to determine whether they are inflows or outflows. Exactly, that's what I was talking about. How do you adjust for impairment of goodwill? How do you adjust for a revaluation loss, amortization, exchange gain, depreciation? Inability to understand the direct method of cash flows. These are comments. So then what cash flows did we study or did we look at level 1? What cash flows did we look at level 2? Are they any different from these? We'll discuss that at the question and answer. Comprehend, analyze in detail the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes. So so that's why I'm convinced that the challenge in this paper is the learning outcome. Did you analyze this depreciation 1050 in detail and how it sits in this cash flow? Did I analyze this exchange gain in detail, assess it in detail, and know how does it sit in this cash flow? That is what I think causes challenges in this paper. I am sure all of us here understand what depreciation is, amortization is, evaluation laws. If I asked, how do you treat it? I'm sure that one is an expense, treated as an expense here. How does you treat it in the cash flows? You need to take a step back. I know someone will tell me it's easy. I can tell it to you when I'm even seated walking, close my eyes. But do you take a step back and say, this depreciation seated here, how do I adjust it in the cash flow? Let's look at the next one. Working capital components. Inability of countries to differentiate what an inflow and outflow is. How is it possible that at level 3, we are still unable to differentiate that what a decrease in inventory and decrease in receivables, an increase in receivables, a decrease in payables means in terms of cash flows? Indirect method. Remember, that is the skill. That's the skill we are taught at financial accounting, we are taught at financial reporting. Then at advanced financial reporting, now we apply that skill practically. So as you're preparing for this paper, don't take these things for granted. Investing activities, 3 comments I've seen there. Candidates unable to compute cash flows. Inability to differentiate between still cash flows and cash inflows. Inability to present. Presentation. You realize that the wordings that are here are actually seated in the learning outcomes.
Excuse me, Bernard.
Yes, please.
Let me encourage members to use the Q&A for any question or any concern as we go along. Please go to Q&A and type in whatever you want to discuss or to comment or any concern. Thank you.
Then what happens to, thank you, Mr. Mchili. Then what happens to the financing activities? Same comments. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying it's difficult. But I will interpret that these comments are actually linked by the inability of the candidates to comprehend what is actually desired of this paper on the basis of the learning outcome. We will discuss this on the question and answer, not a lecture. I might not be able to tell you in detail how to treat them because of time, but we can see. And this is very key. This is very key. What we take for granted is actually what makes this paper passable. Let's look at the second part of that question. The examiner had said contract and contrast disclosure requirements applicable to investment property, fair value, and cost model. So you still realize that these are standards that are still being built from lower level. But then, what is the difference? What is to disclose? So the examiner noted that candidate misinterpreted the question and just explaining two models. Now, that takes us back again to the learning outcomes. What is a disclosure? What do we mean by disclosure? If the candidate, if an examiner asked you to disclose and you went and explained the standard in detail, so you realize that the issue on this paper is not necessarily the ability to understand what's seated in these standards or the reporting standards. It's actually the ability to interpret them, to be able to know what are the components of this, and dissect them in detail. I think that could be the reason why a candidate misinterpreted it. not the misinterpretation. Inability to understand what disclosure entails. What is disclosure? If I pose the question today, on all of us who are preparing to see this paper, what does disclosure mean? If I ask very fast right now at random, I don't know how many candidates right now will be able to tell me what disclosure means in those standards. But definitely, if I ask a candidate of level 3, disclosure, say, disclosure requirements. Yeah, I know disclosure requirements. But what does disclosure mean? When I look at the financial presentation in financial reports, what is a disclosure? I didn't put it there. I don't know if I am correct, but in my life, I'm thinking disclosure meaning making known. Not computing, it's making known to the user. So what do you make known to the user of the financial statements? So other than explaining what this standard of the two models mean, the examiner was asking, what do you need to make known to the user of the financial user of a cost model, disclosure requirement, and fair value? What should be made known to the user? I hope I am communicating. What should be made, not the initial measurement, the subsequent measurement, the revaluation. What should be made known to the user? That if the user is looking at this financial statement, what should he get to know? Disclosure. So you realize, candidates in paper 12, that I am now beginning to change my initial thought that actually candidates fail this paper because they don't understand the standards, they've not prepared well. It's because they have not understood the one page of that syllabus, the 6 words, the 6 magic words embroidered inside the learning outcomes. You can see when we dig deep into these examiners' comments, we realize that no, I think it's not the usual way of thinking. Did any candidate know before today that disclosure means making known to the user whatever it is inside that standard, whatever is that is presented inside that financial information, that you should make it known to the user? How should you make it known? What should you make it known? It is seated inside those standards. Fair value model. So let's look at what the examiner, what should you make known? So I am looking at, I'm trying to imagine that we are discussing this question that this is how we should have attempted this paper. So using the fair value model, what should the presenter should have made known use to the user of the financial reporting standard? What should you have made known use? Not the computation of the depreciation, not the presentation. Inside that presentation, what do you think is relevant to be known, made known to CPA Weary, who is coming to look and read those financial statements, or someone who has zero knowledge in finance? Reconciliation of opening and closing balances showing additions for the year. Make known, it's a disclosure, make known to the user, what did you add? Make known which assets have been classified as assets held for sale. Make known net gains and losses from fair value. Disclosure. Not explaining what this standard is, make known. Let's look at the cost model. Simple. Description of the property. An explanation as to why fair value cannot be determined reliably. If possible, the range which the property fair value is likely to lie. So just imagine for 10 marks, for 6 marks, for 5 marks, to make known. So that's what we call technical capability, professional capability of what this paper examines. That's what we take for granted. But from the examiner's observation, candidate went ahead and explained to the candidate what cost model is, what evaluation model is, what fair value model is, initial recognition. But that's not what the examiner. So the wording and linking it to the learning outcome and to the examiner's paper. I hope I am communicating something. I hope you also have a change in mindset the way I had a change in mindset. Sample discussion. Question 3. Let's look at another one. That was question 1. You would say, no, that's normal. So let's look at another one. The examiner examined question 3, May 2023, International Accounting Standards, IS 41 Agriculture, International Financial Reporting Standards, Financial Instruments, and then impact of environmental, social culture, focusing on corporate governance. These are things that if I asked each of you, you will have them at your fingertips. I'm sure each one of you knows the presentation requirements, the recognition of IS 41, the computation. You have that skill. If I ask you, please compute for me the interest on these financial instruments, what's the liability, what's the equity component? Very fast, I'm sure 99 or 100% of you will basically compute it very fast and put it there. But what did the examiner say? Say, prepare a report to the board. Doing what? Learning outcomes. Discussing, what did we say discussing is in detail. Examine, look at something, write about a report in detail. And then to advising. Candidates, what did the examiner note about it? The time is running, so let me move a bit faster. I wish I had more time. In both cases, how are you supposed to approach such kind of question? Discuss. You've been given a scenario. Advise through a report. Report format. It's very key. It's very key. Basic. I'm sure all of us have seen reports, but why is it possible that when you present that report, you cannot put a report should have an introduction, to have a body, shall have an appendix, the so-called computation. But the computation, the skill you have in computing, the technical capability you have in computing only forms one bit, which is the appendix. What about the other two? Identify the examined standard. That's what, just identifying a standard from the examiner's perspective seems like it earns marks. How many candidates are able to identify that what has been read in this case scenario is standard A? It's not like paper 1 or paper financial reporting that will identify for the standard. From the papers I have read, I have not seen any level 3 paper identifying for a candidate what standard it is. Simply meaning that as you read that case study, you should be able to identify. Discussing the accounting treatment of the transaction. I put it in bracket, write in detail, focusing on the examined transaction and how they will be treated in the financials. Not discussing the presentation, everything in broad, discuss it in detail of that specific scenario. Then accompanying transactions, computations to the detailed discussion. So you realize the format is very key. How many candidates do that? How many candidates do practice for these formats? It's not a miracle. It's not a miracle. I believe in miracles, but it's not a miracle. And then what? So I asked myself as I was making this presentation, then what? Then what? So, okay, so we've looked at all this. Then what? To pass or not to pass? So my fellow CPAs or aspiring CPAs, and then what? And then what? Ask yourself, and then what? So what's making this paper a bit problematic? I think Mr. Mchim will correct me if I'm wrong. I think in the whole pass rates, each one of the sitting from the data I was provided with, it seems to have been either the lowest or the second lowest. I'm not so sure if, but it will be amongst those. And then what? Examiner's instructions. What's the use of the 15 minutes? One candidate tell me, what with the 15 minutes you've been added, 3 hours and 50, what is the use of these 15 minutes? To pass or not to pass? What's the use of those 15 minutes? Is it for planning? Is it for reading the questions? Is it for making choices? Is it for coming down? What exactly? When I used to do CPA, I used to make sure that I wouldn't want to go and sit around and board with books to read because it will give me examination phobia. I used to have it in my head that I would want to sit on a border and find myself on the line, or maybe among the last people to enter, because I didn't want to interact with the environment, everyone with a book and a pen. And so what is the use of those 15 minutes? I don't know. I don't know what I put here. Is it for planning? Is it for reading? But of this, of how you use those 15 minutes will determine whether you'll be able to pass or not to pass. Does it mean that when you are doing this paper, if you are having computational strengths, you are going to pass this paper? Then what? To pass or not to pass? But what exactly is the examiner examining? That's what I started with. What is a technical skill in financial reporting? I've been explaining it. Professional skills in financial reporting, decision-making, presentation. Before you go to sit for this paper, do you possess any of those skills? So we realize that this paper is not all about the strength in computation. Which of those skills do you possess as you're preparing for this paper? How much syllabus coverage? Very key. How much knowledge do you have on the lower papers? We have looked at the cash flows and we realize that all the comments that the examiner put on the cash flows actually relate to paper 1 and financial reporting at level 2. Do we still have that knowledge? Or did we say, as I was studying through my elementary classes, when I will leave primary 8, and I'm going to senior 1, whatever I studied in that level is no longer important. Whatever I studied in senior 1, when I go to senior 2, is no longer irrelevant. Whatever I studied in senior 2 and I go to senior 3, as I kept on growing. But now at CPA, you've realized that that's not the case. From the sample we've seen. Then what is the choice of questions? Does passing CPA means proving a point? I used to lecture those days, and I'll hear and they saying, I'm able to crack the toughest number. And then what? To pass or not to pass? And then what? So I think also the choice of the questions is very key. Choose a question that you are able to do with ease. Max accumulation. It doesn't matter who cracks the toughest number on that paper or the 4 numbers. Now there are 4 and you have to do 3. It doesn't matter. The question is, which one can I be able to accumulate max? So if you chose the toughest one, then what? To pass or not to pass? If I chose the easiest. So I think also the combination of the questions in between there has a big impact on whether to pass or not to pass. Frequency of questions. I think the last time I was invited to do this presentation, I picked out some of the questions that were candidates seem to all ask. So I've tried to put them there. Is this paper about computations? I've already explained it. Will I fail if I only attempt 2 questions? That's normally very bold. If I don't attempt number 1, can't I pass? Very interesting. What are the most examined IFRSs? I may not have the correct answers to these questions, but these are questions that candidates ask. And many more and many more. But I have one answer for all these questions, that any candidate who puts the learning outcomes in their fingertips will be able to pass this paper. I'm hoping that the knowledge that I've shared with you today should be able to help you improve and make you be able to pass in those candidates. I will look and see if the almost over 250 candidates who listened to me today tried to put this into application, and we see that pass rate improving. Let's change the mindset. Thank you for listening. So thank you, Michile. I can listen to questions that we discuss.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
CPA. Thank you, CPA Bernard Wile Wandera, for this insightful presentation, which has given us a good goal for this paper. And I think participants have gained something good too, which will make us, especially when we touched the action verbs mostly used in this paper, the likes of discuss, evaluate, advise. Candidates are really encouraged to pay attention to what the examiner expects out of those action verbs. If it says advise, please do advise. And discuss, please discuss. Thank you very much for this presentation. And I thank you members for coming in good numbers to attend this webinar. Let's now run through the Q&A and see what is there. There is Esther Namakoye who says, how could one term the learning outcomes in a layman's language? I think, Mr. Bire, this candidate wants you to tell her how to, in simple terms, what you mean by learning outcomes.
Thank you very much. So in layman, what is a learning outcome? I'm trying to think of a better word to use. And you say that what do you need to take out of this paper? What knowledge should a candidate be able to possess after attempting this paper, or after learning this paper, or after understanding this paper? What are those areas that a candidate should be able to possess the skill, the knowledge, the output that the candidate should be able to have? I don't know if that's layman language, but if I am undertaking, if I want to produce sugar, what do I put in? If I get sugarcane, I plant sugarcane, and I take the sugar to a crane, and then it's crushed to a conveyor belt. What's the outcome? In simple terms, using another language, the outcome should be like the output. The presentation skills, the ability to have the technical ability to analyze, to discuss, to evaluate, to assess financial reporting. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you. I think in simple terms, what you want to achieve what you should have achieved by the end of maybe studying that topic or that chapter, what you intend to achieve. Then we have anonymous attendee and Angel to see me. They are requesting for a recording of this to be sent to the email. Yes, we shall do that. We shall share the presentation to your portals. Then there is Agnes Kamaine. Thanks for this. How can we manage the limited time versus lengthy paragraphs given on different questions? A concern is seeking advice on how to manage time given the lengthy paragraphs. Please hope her to know how to manage time.
Yes, Michivi, come again. I missed that.
She's seeking advice on how to manage time given the lengthy, as she says, lengthy paragraphs, but I think they're not lengthy. But she says against lengthy paragraphs on the different questions. So her main issue is how to manage time allocated for each question.
So in this paper, just like any other paper, it has 3 hours. If I split those 3 hours on each of the numbers, but you realize that before I even do that, there is the first question, which has 50 marks. So simply meaning that approximately if there were 4 numbers, at least each number should take a maximum of 45 minutes. So the best way to manage your time is to first look at the length of the question, because the length of the questions are not the same all through. There's those ones which are short, there's ones which are a bit longer, which require a lot of reading, and there's ones which are just technical. So the time that you allocate per question should be based on the amount of information that you need to put out there that the examiner has asked you to. Yeah. So that is basically just to you to understand how is your speed. You should also look at your speed. How fast are you in terms of writing? Those candidates who are a bit slow, that one also who are a bit fast. How much data you'll be able to put, and then also to be able to plan your time. The initial minutes that you've been given, there is that planning component. There is that taking notes on the sides a little bit. Inside that booklet, at least you've had some small bullets here and there that you're able to write down that you'll be able to facilitate feeding into your answer. So in simple terms, the best way that you'll be able to manage your time is to plan. The 15 minutes, you remember I said, what are those 15 minutes for? Planning, making choice of the questions, managing your phobia. So in simple terms, I will tell you the best way you can manage your time is to plan. Just plan. And then also, before you go to the examination, try as much as possible to do some of these. Time yourself in 3 hours as you're doing maybe tests and things like that, and try to write and see. You'll be able to know how your speed is within the 3 hours, within the 45 minutes, and how you'll be able to answer this question. Practice makes perfect. With that, you'll be able to plan when you reach in the examination. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody is asking, can one answer 4 questions and the examiner takes 3? Well, the time may not be enough for you to answer the 4 questions and answer them accurately as the examiner expects you. Please, in your interest, stick to the 3 questions which are required to be answered so as to manage your time properly and answer accurately. Then there is Tom Otole, who says that the examiner comment was inability to prepare control accounts. Is it necessary to open all control accounts?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is very necessary to prepare control accounts for you to be able to determine cash flow, especially when you're given the balance sheet to different dates. It's very key. It's very key. Thank you.
And he says, the same person says, what if I decide to just consolidate in the face of financial statements? And I mean, do the add and less on the face for some accounts that, so I think he's trying to avoid the workings, which we say they also earn marks. So please don't avoid workings. That's where actual marks are earned in workings majorly. Yes, we shall share the audio. No, the slides later after this presentation in your portals. Then for questions which require to write a report or memo, what is the proper format for this? So he's asking on the format of a report or a memo. Please advise him on how a memo or a report should go, the format those two documents should take.
So, just like I had put it in the presentation, any report or any memo at least should have whom it is addressed to, whom it is coming from, the introduction of what you're writing about, what are you writing on, the body of that report, and at least an appendix. As basic as that, yeah. What is in the body? The explanation, the discussion. What is in the appendix? The references. In simple terms, references. It refers what's in the body, yeah. The computations and things like that. The introduction, brief talk of something like an executive summary. What do I want to present? So before someone reads your body, by the time I'm reading the executive summary or the introduction, it gives me an insight into what I'm digging into. And then the body now, the detailed discussion, the detailed analysis, the detailed evaluation, and then the appendix, the computations that feed into the body. So basically, these four components form a report and a memo, which should always be at the top of our minds. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Esther Abidier is asking in November 2023, question 1C, was it IS 32 or IFRS 9? In question
IFRS
1, yes?
Come again?
In November 2023, question 1C, she asks whether it was IS 32 or IFRS 9.
Question?
Question 1C of November 2023.
IFRS 13.
Yes?
IFRS 13. Part C. That was IFRS 13. Fair value measurement.
Okay.
That should be IFRS 13, fair value measurement.
Okay, well, let me see other concerns. What could you advise a candidate to do last financial account, financial reporting? That one is not clear. I haven't got it right there. Thank you for this engagement. I would be of the view that you engage the tutors as well who pass the information to the students. Yes, the institute also runs tutors engagements, so that one's already addressed. The tutors also have their own engagements. So Esther Mabirie, your concern is already addressed by the institute. examination time and volume work expected is matching. What's the way forward? I wonder whether this is a question, a compliment, or we request the examiners to put the issue of time into consideration as they set exams. They set lengthy and complicated paragraphs that need a lot of analysis, as we do our best. Okay, Bernard, what's your comment about this lengthy paragraphs? Are they lengthy so as to affect the performance of candidates, or they're just enough and sufficient?
I have looked at the information you have shared with me for the last 4 meetings, and but my opinion, my personal opinion, I understand the opinion of the candidate. I'm not convinced that the questions were a bit lengthy. Yeah, maybe you could say a bit wordy, but the issue of the length, I think they're just sufficient. Yeah, I think that's sufficient. Just to chip in, Mr. Mchili, for the candidates. I believe that before a candidate starts reading the question from, say, question 3, and it has 1 full page, before I read that question, I will think that it is wise for a candidate to read the required. Take that 1 minute and read the required. It will give you an insight exactly of what you're going to read inside that question, before you maybe wake up in the morning and say, maybe this is too long and this is too short. For the issue of the length, I'm not convinced they're lengthy. I think they're just sufficient. But an advice for you to counter that, why don't candidates think or look at the required first before you dig your mind into the long paragraph, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 paragraphs. But based on the 3 you shared with me, I am not convinced they're that long. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Machiri, I can hear you.
That there's Gloria Nansima who wants to know how does IS 32 and the IFRS 9, how the two differ, because she says that whereas she was taught IS 32, the exam quoted IFRS 9. So please help her and others to understand how the two standards differ.
So you realize that they're actually the same standards, but IFRS 9 is just is the new standard that's replacing IS 32. I hope I've answered that precisely.
Okay. Then how much
also
time?
Just to also tell candidates, when I was starting the presentation, I said that candidates, you need to look at the new developments. I'll pose a question based on that. Do you know what IFRS 18 is? It's coming. Have you tried to follow the date on IFRS 18? Which standard is it replacing? So those are the issues that you need to put at your fingertips as you are handling this paper. Thank you, Michi.
Somebody is asking, what time should I spend on number 1? Do you advise that I start with number 1 or I...
I think a candidate should start with any number that they feel comfortable with, for as long as they're able to manage their time very well.
And Edward is saying that question 1 is always time consuming and eats into his time for other questions. Please, that goes to time management, which the presenter has discussed previously, how to manage time so that you can be able to answer all the 3 questions. Then there is Wilson who says, is it possible to answer all the questions and examiner chooses? That one we said that time may not be a good friend if you choose to answer all of them. Yes, you may, but you may not answer them correctly and satisfactorily. So please, you may stick to the 3 questions in your interest. What happens when I answer more than the required? I think the same issue with the one I've talked about. Please stick to. It is in your interest that you stick to 3 questions so as to manage time and to ensure accuracy. Format and writing. Okay, how do briefing notes look like? How is it different from a report? So please advise Philip to know how briefing notes and a report differ.
Are you talking about the brief notes in preparation of answering the question, or brief notes as a part of the answer?
I think the question is who may ask a candidate to make a brief notes about some subject, and also those which ask them to make a report. So
I take you back to the learning outcomes. You realize that at this level, I don't know the last time I saw an examiner saying or requiring students to make brief notes, but just to make the difference. Brief notes are like just bullets, basic explanation that don't need detailed analysis or deep into the information you're presenting. But I'm not so sure. I'm not so convinced that that is still examinable at this level. Which you can correct me on that. But brief notes are just bullets. The report is actually detailed, the detailed analysis of what you're presenting.
Yes, you're right, because at this level, level 3, they rarely ask you to write brief notes, because basically you are at level of advisory level, recommending, evaluating. So it's rare to ask you to make a brief notes. It is usually a report, recommend, evaluate, and so on. Some others are still on the lengthy paragraphs, and but we said they are not length. They can be managed in 3 hours if you plan your time well. And the same other, okay, this 32 and IFRS 9 also has been answered. It says, how do you treat costs under IFRS 9 and 32?
Yes, it's actually the same. Like I said, it's IFRS 9 is just a replacement of IAS 32. So the treatment of the cost has not differed the way it used to be treated initially. Thank you.
One says, we still echo that the institute publishes a list of certified. Okay, this is management. So we have gone past our time by just a few minutes, and I wish to thank you people, the participants, for being so engaging. You have engaged us, you have engaged the presenter, and we encourage you to please keep coming in good numbers whenever there is an engagement, because it is beneficial for our passing this paper and getting more knowledge on how to go about it and to pass at first attack. Thank you, Mr. William Bennett, for giving us your time this morning to present to us. And thank you, dear participants, for coming in big numbers and being so active in this engagement. I wish to end it here by wishing you a good day and many wishes as you attack this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, CPM for moderating this session. This is a reminder to the candidates. At 11, we're having CPA 13, Public Financial Management. Thank you.